Combat. Flash pulled out his pistol and in a crouch darted away from the large boulder, rolling to the left at the last moment behind another much smaller pile of rocks. The machine below fired another shot, slightly burning Flash's right leg with a spray of molten rock. He cried out in more pain than he felt while he desperately searched his immediate area for something very specific. The machine fired again, blasting away one of the larger rocks nearby, as Flash found what he was looking for. He bobbed up and then immediately back down, catching just a glimpse of the machine almost directly below him, and less than 50 meters away. Again the machine fired, dislodging another rock. Flash cried out even louder this time, and then threw his pistol over the pile of rocks down at the machine. For several long moments there was absolute silence, and Flash strained to hear over the wind if the machine was stationary or still climbing. Satisfied that the machine was not moving, Flash cautiously got to his feet and stepped away from the protection of the rocks. The machine looked up, its weapon pointed his way, its huge red eye staring. It existed for combat. That's what Martin had said. Combat, not merely murder. Flash carefully moved to the base of a large boulder perched precariously on the hillside and, from the frozen ground beneath it, pried loose a fist-sized stone, one of several holding the boulder from rolling downhill. He hefted it a moment in his right hand, and then threw it with all of his might down at the machine, which casually watched the rock fly, then pointed its weapon up, blowing it out of the sky. Flash laughed, bent down and pried loose a couple more of the rocks, throwing them one at a time at the machine, which impassively blasted them and then began moving slowly up the slope. In earnest now, Flash got down on his hands and knees and frantically began digging the rocks and loose dirt from the base of the boulder as the machine came closer and closer up the hill. He had not engaged in hand-to-hand combat with any of the machines so far, and he did not want to begin now, so he redoubled his efforts. He looked up finally as the machine was less than 5 meters away, then jumped up and rushed around behind the huge rock and put his shoulder to it. It moved slightly, and Flash shoved harder, setting up a rocking motion. The machine, apparently realizing what was about to happen, tried to scramble backward while firing at the huge boulder. But suddenly the massive chunk of granite-like material broke loose and began ponderously rolling, slowly at first, down the hill, but gathering momentum rapidly. At the last moment, the machine tried to move sideways out of the boulder's path, but it was too late, and the huge rock slammed into the machine, crushing it amid a shower of sparks and a spurt of its hydrodynamic fluid. It careened over the machine and then past the broken remains, crashing all the way down the hill. As Flash got to his feet from where he had fallen when the boulder had given way, the wind died. The snow stopped falling. The temperature began to rise, and the lights in the huge testing center came up. Flash brushed himself off as he started down the long hill, and in the distance he could see a ground car approaching across the plain. For nearly 2 months he had been going through this sort of thing, with variations, while Dr. Hans Zarkov was learning the planet's computer systems, and Dale Arden was working with the crew of the Good Hope on a Citadel defense system. At the bottom of the hill, Flash waited by the dirt road for the ground car to reach him, thinking about all that had happened to them over the past fantastic weeks. He tried once again to make some sense out of what they would eventually have to do. It had begun when the Federation exploration vessel Good Hope had been discovered in deep space and towed back to Earth orbit by a Trans-Federation Company cargo vessel. It had been 2.5 months ago, and 165 light-years away from here, when Dr. Zarkov had been called in by the military to attempt to board the Good Hope. The exploration vessel had been sent into deep space 200 years earlier, before the time-then-faster-than-light drive had been invented. When Zarkov, his niece, Dale Arden, and Flash had entered the Good Hope, they had found all but one of its 158-member crew murdered, their throats slashed. The missing crew member was a young woman named Sandra Devonshire. Flash shook his head, trying to sort out in his memory all the strange things that had happened to them. Trans-Federation, the most powerful and some said malevolent multi-planet corporation in the Federation, which had laid salvage claims to the Good Hope, had sent a crew up to burn its way aboard the vessel when it automatically took off, jumped into hyperspace even though it supposedly didn't have that capability, and finally crash-landed on this planet, which they later learned was called Citadel 1. Flash, Dale, and Dr. Zarkov, on board the Good Hope trying to unravel the 200-year-old murder mystery, barely managed to escape on a shuttle vessel that was itself destroyed in a hard landing, stranding them on this planet. Then, step by inexorable step, they were led to the planet's only city, which had been built more than 20,000 years earlier.